It's happening again. A major storm, unlike any we've seen this year, is about to explode off the East Coast. Forecasters are tracking a powerful new nor'easter set to strike from the Carolinas to New England from October 11th to 14th, bringing relentless rain, hurricane-force wind gusts, and dangerous flooding right as the king tides peak. Entire neighborhoods could be cut off, with North Carolina's beaches facing another round of catastrophic erosion after losing 9 homes already. Meteorologists are calling this a full-fledged threat, possibly even strong enough to earn a hurricane name if conditions turn just right. But what exactly makes this system so much more dangerous? And how bad could it get before it's over? A nor'easter is a type of coastal storm that gets its name from the strong northeast winds it brings as it moves up the Atlantic shoreline. These storms are most common from late September through April, and they are known for producing some of the most disruptive weather on the East Coast. What sets a nor'easter apart is the way it forms. Cold, dry air from the north clashes with warm, moist air over the ocean, creating a sharp temperature divide that fuels rapid storm development. The result is a sprawling low-pressure system that draws in moisture and wind, often stretching from the Carolinas all the way into New England. Unlike classic winter nor'easters that dump heavy snow, this one is expected to bring all rain. That's because the cold air needed for snow just isn't in place. Instead, forecasters are warning about relentless downpours, strong winds, and dangerous coastal flooding. The Weather Prediction Center is already calling this a full-fledged nor'easter, language reserved for storms that meet strict criteria for size, wind direction, and impact. When meteorologists use terms like that, it means this is not just a run-of-the-mill coastal low. This is a system with the potential to disrupt daily life for millions, and it's being watched closely by every major forecasting agency. As the storm prepares to take shape, the focus is on its unique structure and the serious threats it poses along the entire eastern seaboard. On Friday, October 11th, a stalled cold front parked just off the coasts of Georgia and the Carolinas becomes the spark for this developing nor'easter. Warm, humid air streaming in from the Atlantic meets cooler, drier air pushing down from the north. That clash sets off a chain reaction in the atmosphere, allowing a low-pressure center to form right along the boundary. As soon as this low develops, it taps into deep moisture over the Gulf Stream, drawing energy and water vapor into its circulation. That's when winds along the coast begin to pick up, sustained at 20 to 35 miles per hour, with higher gusts possible even in the early stages. By Saturday, the low quickly organizes and starts to strengthen. The center of the storm hugs the Carolina coastline, sending bands of heavy rain and strong winds into North and South Carolina. That's the day when conditions deteriorate fastest for the Outer Banks and the Barrier Islands. Rainfall rates increase and wind gusts approach 50 miles per hour in exposed areas. The storm's pressure drops as it feeds on the sharp temperature contrast and the warm ocean below. As the weekend progresses, the nor'easter accelerates northward, tracking parallel to the shore. By Sunday, the storm's core moves into the mid-Atlantic, impacting Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey. Heavy rain and strong winds extend far inland, while coastal areas brace for flooding and rough surf. On Monday, October 14th, the system reaches New England, with its strongest winds likely targeting coastal Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Cape Cod, and the islands. Some computer models suggest the storm could linger over the warm Gulf Stream long enough to pick up subtropical features, raising the slight possibility it could be named Karen by the National Hurricane Center. But regardless of its name, the timeline is set. Friday's formation, Saturday's southern peak, Sunday and Monday's run up the coast, and then a gradual exit to the north. Saturday brings the first true test for the Carolina coast. Early in the morning, heavy sheets of rain sweep across beaches and neighborhoods from Myrtle Beach up through Wilmington, then farther north into the Outer Banks. Rainfall totals quickly climb, 3 to 6 inches in some spots, turning streets into rivers and overwhelming drainage systems. Wind gusts ramp up, reaching 50 miles per hour along the exposed headlands and barrier islands. Power flickers as tree limbs snap and lines sway. For residents in places like Rodanthe and Nag's Head, the pounding surf is relentless. 10 to 20-foot waves crash against what's left of the dunes, sending salt spray over the highway and carving away more of the fragile shoreline. The Outer Banks are already in crisis. Since the end of September, 9 unoccupied homes have collapsed into the Atlantic, their foundations undermined by weeks of high tides and earlier storms. Now, with the nor'easter piling on days of onshore wind and giant waves, officials warn that more houses could be at risk. Emergency crews stand by, watching as water pushes farther inland with each tide cycle. Highway 12, the only road in and out from many barrier island communities, floods repeatedly, cutting off neighborhoods and stranding residents who chose to stay. Flooded roads aren't the only worry. The king tides, already running higher than normal, combine with the storm's surge to push water 1 to 3 feet above typical levels. Low-lying properties and businesses along the sound and oceanfront take on water, and some streets disappear beneath several inches of saltwater. Beach erosion accelerates, with entire sections of sand vanishing overnight. Local officials debate whether to focus on short-term fixes like sandbags and temporary berms, or to start planning for bigger changes. Some talk about relocating homes that now sit just feet from the surf. The situation is tense and personal for the people who call the Outer Banks home. Each high tide brings new uncertainty, and with the storm still strengthening, the worst may not yet be over. As rain and wind push northward, the Carolinas brace for another night of pounding waves and rising water. As rain bands surge north, the mid-Atlantic comes into focus. By Sunday morning, steady downpours stretch from the Virginia Tidewater through the Delmarva Peninsula, blanketing cities like Norfolk, Salisbury, and Dover. The Weather Prediction Center is flagging this region for a widespread 2 to 3 inches of rainfall, but there are pockets, especially in eastern Maryland and along the Delaware Bay, where totals could climb as high as 6 inches. These are the zones where the ground saturates quickly and runoff has nowhere to go, raising the risk for flash flooding in both rural and urban neighborhoods. In places like Ocean City, Maryland, and Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, storm drains and small creeks face a test they rarely pass. Water backs up into streets, parking lots, and low-lying homes. Even away from the immediate coast, towns along the Chesapeake Bay, including Annapolis and Cambridge, see rain rates that overwhelm stormwater systems. Emergency managers are already warning about the potential for basement flooding, closed roads, and delays for anyone trying to get around. The National Weather Service has issued a Level 2 out of 4 flash flood risk for much of the area, meaning conditions are favorable for rapid rises in water and dangerous travel. Farther inland, the rain is steady but not as intense, with totals closer to 1 to 2 inches from Richmond up through Philadelphia. Still, the persistent nature of the rainfall, hour after hour, with only brief breaks, means even well-drained neighborhoods could see standing water. For farmers across southern Delaware and eastern Maryland, saturated fields threaten late harvests and livestock safety. School districts and local governments are monitoring river gauges and preparing sandbags as a precaution. By Sunday night, the rain shield pushes north into New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania, but the Delmarva region remains under the gun for localized flooding. In these communities, the combination of high rainfall rates and already elevated water tables sets the stage for a challenging start to the week. All eyes turn to the next threat: how rising tides and onshore winds might stack up against this waterlogged backdrop. Tide gauges up and down the East Coast are already showing water levels running higher than normal, and that's even before the main surge from the nor'easter arrives. What makes this weekend's flooding risk so unusual is the timing. The storm's strongest onshore winds are set to hit right as the king tides peak, a period each year when the moon's pull causes the highest astronomical tides. That means barrier islands and coastal neighborhoods are facing both the usual storm surge and a natural tide cycle that's already pushing the limits. For much of the coast from North Carolina through New Jersey and into Long Island Sound, the combination is expected to drive water levels 1 to 3 feet above typical high tide. In spots like Buxton and Rodanthe on the Outer Banks, modeled totals show 2 to 3 feet of extra water piling up during the night of October 12th. The same story plays out in Chesapeake Bay, where Norfolk and Virginia Beach are likely to see water levels cresting near 3 feet above normal, enough to flood key roads and low-lying neighborhoods. It's not just open coastlines at risk. Places tucked inside bays and sounds, like Annapolis or parts of New York City, face their own set of problems. Inundation maps show that even a 1-foot rise above normal can flood city streets, strand cars, and impact critical infrastructure like subway entrances and power substations. At 2 feet, evacuation routes and waterfront businesses come under threat. 3 feet brings widespread inundation, with water covering entire blocks and forcing closures of hospitals, transit depots, and emergency services. Local topography and the shape of the shoreline matter too. The flat, sandy profiles of barrier islands offer little resistance to rising water, while urban waterfronts with seawalls or old drainage systems can see water back up through storm drains. Wave run-up, driven by persistent northeast winds and offshore waves of 10 to 20 feet, adds another layer, sometimes pushing water even farther inland than models predict. For city planners and emergency crews, the challenge is clear. With king tides and nor'easter surge lining up, even modest wind speeds can deliver major flooding to places that usually stay dry. The next high tide cycle could be the tipping point for many coastal communities. Major cities up and down the East Coast are bracing for a weekend of disruption as the nor'easter moves in. In Wilmington and Myrtle Beach, Saturday brings relentless rain, 3 to 6 inches possible in less than 24 hours. Wind gusts climb toward 50 miles per hour by afternoon, rattling windows and sending debris across busy intersections. Emergency crews in Charleston and the coastal Carolinas are already fielding calls about downed trees and flooded streets, with power flickering in some neighborhoods as the ground softens and lines begin to sway. By late Saturday into Sunday, the focus shifts north. Norfolk and Virginia Beach face 2 to 3 feet of extra water along the bays and inlets. In these low-lying cities, even a modest surge can flood tunnels, close waterfront highways, and force detours around key bridges. Rainfall totals push past 4 inches in some spots, and by Sunday, the threat of flash flooding extends into the heart of Baltimore and Washington, D.C. Here, the concern is less about coastal surge and more about storm drains overwhelmed by hours of steady downpour. Commuters heading into downtown on Monday morning could find major arteries underwater, with metro stations on alert for possible closures. Farther north, Philadelphia and Trenton are in the path of the heaviest rain bands late Sunday into Monday. 2 to 4 inches of rain are expected, with the highest totals near the Delaware River. Winds along the Jersey Shore ramp up overnight, gusting to 50 miles per hour. Atlantic City's boardwalk and barrier island neighborhoods prepare for street flooding as tides run 1 to 2 feet above normal. In New York City, the timing of the storm coincides with Monday's morning rush. Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn's waterfronts are particularly vulnerable, with 2 to 3 feet of extra water possible during the high tide cycle. The city's subway entrances and power substations in flood-prone zones are monitored closely, as even a brief surge can knock out critical infrastructure. Long Island and coastal Connecticut see similar threats: heavy rain, gusty winds, and the risk of widespread power outages. By Monday night, Boston and the New England coast feel the full force of the nor'easter. Gusts could reach 60 miles per hour along Cape Cod, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard, while rainfall climbs past 2 inches in the city. For millions living and working in these urban corridors, The combination of wind, water, and high tides means travel delays, closed schools, and the real possibility of extended power outages as the storm grinds north. A Level 2 flash flood risk now covers much of the coast, signaling that rapid water rises are possible in neighborhoods already saturated by days of rain. Just a few inches in a short span can turn familiar streets into rivers or push creeks past their banks. Emergency managers warn that some communities may need to evacuate with little notice and urge everyone to avoid flooded roads. Even shallow water can sweep away vehicles or strand families. Alerts may arrive with little lead time, so staying informed is essential. Rip currents will threaten swimmers and surfers from the Carolinas to New England. Strong onshore winds and heavy surf are expected to carve out dangerous channels along hundreds of miles of shoreline. Even after the storm's peak, these currents will linger, making the ocean hazardous for days. Lifeguards and officials are urging people to stay out of the water, with waves offshore reaching 10 to 20 feet in places like the Outer Banks and Cape Cod. The risk remains high, even when skies clear. Power outages are likely as winds reach 40 to 50 miles per hour along the coast, with higher gusts in exposed areas. Saturated ground makes trees more likely to fall, pulling down power lines and blocking roads. Utility crews are preparing, but some outages may last if flooding slows repairs. Residents are advised to charge phones and backup batteries, gather flashlights, bottled water, and non-perishable food, and prepare for the possibility of being without power for more than a day. Travel will be disrupted. Major airports from Washington, D.C. to Boston anticipate delays and cancellations as rain and wind hit during peak travel times. Road closures are possible in flood-prone areas, and bridges may be shut down if conditions worsen. Those with travel plans should monitor updates and consider alternatives. Meanwhile, the Atlantic remains active. Tropical storm Jerry, the 10th named storm this season, formed earlier in the week and is expected to become a hurricane, though it poses no immediate threat to the U.S. The nor'easter could even linger over warm Gulf Stream waters long enough to pick up subtropical features and be named Karen, though that remains unlikely. The storm is expected to pull away late Monday into Tuesday, but another round of unseasonable heat is forecast to build by late next week. For now, the focus remains on preparation, gathering supplies, securing outdoor items, and staying alert as conditions evolve. By October 11th, 2025, a rapidly strengthening nor'easter is set to impact over 50 million people from North Carolina to New England. Official forecasts call for 2 to 6 inches of rain in some regions, wind gusts as high as 60 miles per hour along coastal Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and tide levels running 1 to 3 feet above normal during king tides. The Outer Banks face renewed risk, with 9 homes already lost since September 30th due to previous storms. While the National Weather Service has issued a Level 2 flash flood threat, and the Weather Prediction Center calls this a full-fledged nor'easter, it remains uncertain whether the system will acquire subtropical characteristics and earn the name Karen. The wider context includes Tropical Storm Jerry, the 10th named storm of a notably active Atlantic season. As the storm exits by Tuesday, the immediate threat will pass, but the vulnerability of coastal communities and the need for preparation remain clear. Documented impacts from this nor'easter reinforce the reality that timely warnings and readiness save lives.